Often our guide for behavior around other living things comes from our own inner awareness of what we like or dislike. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In early childhood, this awareness is not complete. As we mature, we become more aware of what we think and feel we want or don't want from our interactions with the living and memories of the past. Often, it's this awareness of likes and dislikes to make laws. Before we have our foot stepped on by others, we may not know that we are hurting others, but we step on theirs because we have only the experience of pressure on the bottoms of our feet, not the tops. In these cases, those who know the pain are the ones seeking the laws to prevent you from doing it again. When you experience the pain of having your actual or psychological foot stepped on, you will understand. Society apparently does not want to wait around for the ignorant to come to this understanding, so laws are put in place to keep them from blindly violating others. In some cases, this common sense approach to manners gets twisted, as with alcoholism, drug addiction, sadism, masochism, power struggles, competition, greed, jealousy, war, victimhood, etc. The sadist and masochist may love to beat or be beaten by others and think that what they want is what you want. The alcoholic wants to try to resolve all their problems with a drink and may assume that this is what you need for your problems. When the variations of spiritual evolution or conscience are taken into consideration for the development of a society based on and functioning with core spiritual/psychological principles, we may be in need of a humane means of separating those living harmonious love from those disconnected from their natural inclination towards love and tangled in the ignorance of repeatedly violating these principles or willfully setting out on the self-centered path of satisfying their own personal desires. Beyond necessity, regardless of the consequences to others in this society. Most current societies have methods of dealing with those who violate the laws of that society, as in socially engineered public opinion, jails, institutions, Siberia, etc. These punitive methods are incompatible with harmonious omniversal loving union. Punishment is not as effective as positive reinforcement when seeking behavior modification. Fulfillment of love and the disturbance of ill emotions are the natural rewards and penalties of a healthy society. Separation may be like some of the ending statements in the book of Revelation 21:22-27. Saw no temple in the city, for its temple is the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb. The city had no need of sun or moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gave it light, and its lamp was the Lamb. Nations will walk by its light, and to it the kings of the earth will bring their treasure. During the day its gates will never be shut, there will be no night there. The treasure and wealth of the nations will be brought there. Nothing unclean will enter it, or anyone who does abominable things or tells lies. Only those will enter whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Or Revelation 22:14-15. Blessed are they who wash their robes so as to have right to the tree of life and enter the city through its gates. Outside are the dogs, sorcerers, the unchanged caste, murderers, the idol worshippers, all who love and practice deceit. From these descriptions, we see that the New Jerusalem is an open-door community. Would those outside be allowed in if they evolved spiritually, and those on the inside be cast out if they devolved spiritually? Or are those on the outside simply outside permanently? If this were a human-made community, then this would be the case, as in some social circles and private societies that deny membership or allow reinstatement. An earthly version of heaven on earth would probably also have to be a large designated area heavily guarded to keep non-spiritual beings out until they learn to live in harmonious love. It may be that all humans have the capacity to align themselves with our innate drive for harmonious omniversal loving union. Whether they follow through with this unification or not is currently only a suggestion. When people are saturated in their own inner love and the love of all others, there will be no need for them to act out negatively. Even those who have unconsciously developed patterns of negatively reinforced behaviors have been seeking love. There will be no need for prisons, gates, private property, or other forms of segregation if all loved all. It is a natural part of being human to want to love and be loved. Therefore, very little instruction is needed. This love drive is inherent in our being. Almost everything we do is consciously or unconsciously driven by the yearning to achieve the euphoria, peace, and satisfaction of harmonious loving unity with our world or God. Private property, though it has its place in current society, its interference with harmonious loving union with all. Until humans evolved beyond animals and criminals, private property with human-made laws that protect it and restrict freedom may be necessary evils. Spiritual childhood may need supervision due to possible harm to self and other creatures, while spiritual maturity implies reverence for all people, places, things, and therefore freedom to move through all boundaries, including private property. Question of what to do with those who are unwilling or incapable of evolving spiritually beyond the human animal will eventually arise and will have to be dealt with in any proposition of a utopian society, especially in future generations when overpopulation threatens select societies or humanity and nature as a whole. Separation of spirituality and state. Henry Louis Mencken, 1880 to 1956. Government, in its very essence, is opposed to all increase in knowledge. Its tendency is always toward permanence and against change. Progress of humanity, far from being the result of government, has been made entirely without its aid and in the face of its constant and bitter opposition. Separation of church and state is a legitimate division due to the errors and conflicts within both systems. Separation of spirituality or spiritual principles and state, on the other hand, causes problems. The separation of spiritual values from government and religion leads to a split population, one minority group of socially successful Wizards of Oz living by rules that do not exclude deception, slavery, theft, abuse, neglect, etc., the larger majority being used by them who may live by narrow moral standards, cripple their competitive edge. Portion of society lives, or is supposed to live, by spiritual principles, and the other lives by an arbitrary version of survival of the most cunning and / or the one with the most money. There are rules for the slave and rules for the slave owner / trader. Healthy society may be one that will choose either the law of the jungle, survival of the most cunning or deceptive and unnatural selection, or the unification of spiritual law, omniversal unity and love, forgiveness, faith, honesty, etc., a state in which everyone plays the same game by the same rules. Capitalist principles, used or abused by humans, turn into a form of survival of the most connected, clever or immoral. Those with the restrictive morals of literal Christianity and Buddhism, along other morally limited ideologies, do not thrive in pure capitalism, while those who learn how easy money is made, or printed, and manage do thrive through manipulation or sales of others' productivity, inventiveness, and / or their ability to use humanity and nature for their gain, even at the expense of humanity and nature. When we mix religion and morals into the system, some of the weak-minded and injured are supported through welfare programs and charities as possible pacifiers of revolution. Without spiritual values, earth and power appear to be the goal of a life that is considered thriving, while lying, cheating, stealing, killing, and any other violation / crime / sin suffer little or no consequence for those in power. Life will be more closely related to some of the evolutionary laws of the jungle. Without God and the morality given by the compassionate religions, should we be involved in a free-for-all with only those clever enough or strong enough surviving and the rest of those competing for resources eliminated or allowed to perish? Without spirituality and God, morality appears to be a farce and an interference with natural selection processes. Street gangs, drug cartels, Some corporations and some governments live lives of the new urban jungle with guns, drugs, and money. Anything that one can get away with while thriving is the rule in these cultures. Separation of spiritual principles from the laws of the land benefits financial barbarians. Profiting from home foreclosures shows that we not only live like animals but have laws to protect and endorse predatory behavior among those who have financial wealth. Banks, investors/stock markets, government agencies, insurance companies, real estate agencies, etc. Love and compassion-based religion could be and is currently used as a tool of subordination, manipulation, pacification, herd management. Where money is the god and provider of all, as in the religion of capitalism, the ends justify the means and make thriving in wealth at all costs the primary purpose of life, without regard for the consequences to humanity and nature, which is already the case with most wealthy humans, especially while struggling for the top of the cash pile. The poor do not or did not own slaves/employees, decimate rainforests for status-laden exotic wood and development rights, dump large quantities of pollutants into bodies of water, the air, and the soil, start, direct, continue and finance major wars, mass produce, market and benefit from sales of toxic fuels, junk food, sugar, alcohol, tobacco, debt, drugs, etc. Slaves are managed more easily if they are loving, forgiving, honest, fair, trusting and trustworthy, prone to guilt when they err, sensitive, confused, showing authentic concern for others or empathetic, limited in choices other than allowing themselves to be squeezed as much as the market will do, willing to suffer much and long, hungry, powerless, etc. Slave owners are better suited to personalities that are callous, heartless, unforgiving, purpose-driven, dishonest, intolerant, clever, psychopathic, sociopathic, etc. It appears that a nation or human population will either live by godlessness and survival at the most deceptive, so that everyone knows the rules and accepts their own and others' social status like members of a wolf pack, or they live by spiritual principles so that everyone and everything is sacred. With both sets of rules being followed in varying degrees across the entire social spectrum, there is mass mental illness and discord with humans among humans and their relationship with nature. The rich claim their wealth to be a reward for talent, and they should let all the poor know that these are the rules. When the poor know that the rules were made by the wealthy to protect the interests of the wealthy, then the poor may attempt to have a choice in whether they will obey these rules and remain slaves or eliminate the entire system of protect the wealthy rules. Harmony and love-based religion has long been abused as a pacifier for the majority that end up as slaves under whatever name they are called: soldiers, employees, guards, police, military, trustees, civilians, religious leaders, etc. A minority of cunning social manipulators reap the rewards of the slavery due to separation of spirituality from state. A revision of or restoration of natural or spiritual law will have to include the elimination of the ideologies of parasitic slaveholders, debt slavery, the slave governments that create and maintain them. Jesus' statement that you cannot serve God and mammon is certainly true. Compromise between the two opposing sides leads to insanity for the individual and society. Does humanity want to live by the law of the jungle or by spiritual laws? Does it always have to be that those in power or rising to power will choose the law of survival of the cleverest, most callous, deceptive as financial and litigious barbarians, while those out of power and/or the poor are usually left with only the choice of spiritual principles to try to make their lives worth living? Are spiritual principles the only salvation for the poor? Liberty or freedom? John Woolman, 1720 to 1772. The creator of the earth is the owner of it. Ernst Toller, 1893 to 1939. As a rule, people are afraid of truth. Each truth we discover in nature or social life destroys the crutches on which we need to lean. Herbert Spencer, 1820 to 1903. Belief, only of socialists but also of those so-called liberals who are diligently preparing the way for them, is that by due skill and ill-working humanity may be framed into well-working institutions. It is a delusion. The defective nature of citizens will show themselves in the bad acting of whatever social structure they are arranged into. There is no political alchemy by which you can get golden conduct out of leaden instruments, except the path of love. Mao Zedong, 1893 to 1976. Liberalism is extremely harmful. It is a corrosive, which disrupts unity, deprives the revolutionary ranks of compact organization and discipline. Salvador de Madariaga, 1886 to 1978. Inequality is the inevitable consequence of liberty. The trouble today is that the communist world understands unity but not liberty. The free world understands liberty but not unity. Eventually the victory may be won by the first of the two sides to achieve the synthesis of both liberty and unity. Path of love will synthesize both. Alexis Tocqueville, 1805 to 1859. Democratic institutions awaken and foster a passion for equality which they can never satisfy. In the principle of equality, I discern two tendencies, one leading the mind of every man to untried thoughts, other prohibiting him from thinking at all. I know of no country in which there is so little true independence of mind and freedom of discussion as in America. Majority raises very formidable barriers to the liberty of opinion. Within these barriers an author may write whatever he pleases. He will repent it if he ever steps beyond them. Not that he is exposed to the terrors of an auto da fe, but he is tormented by the slights and persecutions of daily obloquy. His political career is closed forever. If great writers have not at present existed in America, reason is very simply given in the fact that there can be no literary genius without freedom of opinion, and freedom of opinion does not exist in America. Americans are so enamored of equality that they would rather be equal in slavery than unequal in freedom. John Locke, 1632 to 1704. The natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth, and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man, but to have only the law of nature for his rule. The liberty of man in society is to be under no other legislative power but that established by consent in the Commonwealth, nor under the dominion of any will or restraint of any law but what that legislative shall enact according to the trust put in it. The freedom of men under government is to have a standing rule to live by, common to every one of that society, made by the legislative power erected in it, a liberty to follow my own will in all things where that rule prescribes not to be subject to the inconstant, uncertain, unknown, arbitrary will of another man. His freedom of nature is to be under no other restraint but the law of nature. Freedom from absolute, arbitrary power is so necessary to, and closely joined with, man's preservation. He cannot part with it but by what forfeits his preservation and life together. For a man, not having the power of his own life, cannot by compact or his own consent enslave himself to any one, or put himself under the absolute, arbitrary power of another to take away his life when he pleases. Michelican de Montaigne, 1533 to 1592. Principal effect of the power of custom is to seize and ensnare us in such a way that it is hardly within our power to get ourselves back out of its grip and return unto ourselves to reflect and reason about its ordinances. The common notions that we find increded around us and infused into our soul by our fathers' seed, these seem to be the universal and natural ones. Whence it comes to pass that what is off the hinges of custom, people believe to be off the hinges of reason, God knows how unreasonably, most of the time. The laws keep up their credit, not by being just, but because they are laws. 'Tis the mystic foundation of their authority. They have no other, and it well answers their purpose. They are often made by fools, still oftener by men who, of hatred to equality, fail in equity, always by men, vain and irresolute authors. John Stuart Mill, 1806 to 1873, mind itself is bowed to the yoke, even in what people do for pleasure. Conformity is the first thing thought of. They live in crowds. They exercise choice only among things commonly done. Peculiarity of taste, eccentricity of conduct, are shunned equally with crimes, till by dint of not following their own nature they have no nature to follow. Their human capacities are withered and starved. They become incapable of any strong wishes or native pleasures, and are generally without either opinions or feelings of home growth, or properly their own. Question is whether there would be any asylum left for individuality of character, whether public opinion would not be a tyrannical yoke, whether the absolute dependence of each on all, and surveillance of each by all, would not grind down into a tame uniformity of thoughts, feelings, and actions. No society in which eccentricity is a matter of reproach can be in a wholesome state. Josiah Warren, 1799 to 1874. Liberty is the sovereignty of the individual. Never shall man know liberty until each and every individual is acknowledged to be the only legitimate sovereign of his or her person, time, and property, each living and acting at his own cost. Not until we live in a society where each can exercise his right of sovereignty at all times without clashing with or violating that of others. Require conformity in the appreciation of sentiments or the interpretation of language, or uniformity of thought, feeling, action, is a fundamental error in human legislation, madness which would be only equaled by requiring all to possess the same countenance, same voice, or the same nature. While a society can offer relief from some or most of the natural needs or laws of survival for the individual, as in food, shelter, and protection, we trade off many natural freedoms in the vast web of punishment-based human-made laws. Who is free and what are they free to do within the ordinary context of the overused, vague, delusional term, freedom? Does someone's freedom come at the cost of someone else's pain or bondage? Does free enterprise enslave many more than it frees, or free a minority and enslave the majority? Does free will include the freedom to choose suffering over harmony? Can we honestly choose suffering, or is it in our best interest to choose pleasure, harmony? Is it true that most forms of pleasure have pain attached to them like the front and back of the same coin? If this is the case, do we really have free will? Should only peaceful humans with loving reverence for all things be allowed maximum freedom? Should we have tests to determine which humans have or will have enough awareness and reverence for all to merit certifications of graduation for maximum freedom like current licensing requirements for hunting, driving, flying, teaching, practicing medicine, etc.? Criminal records and credit scores can muzzle some and liberate others in certain directions or dimensions of society. Most of us would love to be able to walk into any social setting in the world and be able to love and be loved and accepted by all the inhabitants of that society. Do we have freedom of conscience, or are public opinion, media censorship and harassment, excessive human law, governing bodies, financial institutions, as much as the market will pay a cost of living, manipulations of supply generating demand disturbances, marketing, politics, fashion trends, etc., restricting what some would call the last freedom that we have in the relative privacy of conscience? Liberty and freedom are positive terms for a society that considers harmonious loving union with all to be its number one priority. It actual result of these terms in action within current societies is that it divides humanity into factions of people insisting on separation to maintain their rights in constant defensive posturing for their conflicting ideals or the cognitive dissonance of individuality and equality. These concepts eventually create mass social disturbances and unrest unless it is combined with principles conducive to harmonious loving union and reverence for all. An imaginary society based on theoretical absolute freedom, without considering reverence, is all crimes and or sin to be committed without restriction. This social Pandora's box is now being opened or experimented with in many U.S. cities. These violations would not be labeled crimes or sins in a society that practices absolute freedom. As violations, crime, or sin threaten the freedom of others and people become aware of these violations, and laws and a government to enforce these laws is created. Fear of the freedoms of others and the actual infringement of personal freedom by the freedom of others continues to produce more and more intricately detailed laws. As this so-called free society evolves or devolves, citizens become more and more aware of the most subtle, actual, but imaginary interferences that the freedom of others is having on their freedom and the criminal, literary, immigration, environmental, zoning, tax, planning, family, business, marital, labor, traffic, corporate and other laws grow more numerous and continue to work their way into every move a person makes. Most of the currently established punitive systems punish preemptively for potential violations or crimes: speeding, no inspections, no insurance, weapons possession, illegal or non-pharmaceutical, untaxed drugs, not registering or obtaining the proper permit for whatever, etc., etc., etc. Governments and religions or the people that run them seek more restrictions on the population in general rather than more freedom, as is witnessed in practically all current and past societies and cultures. Finally, we have a large military complex, vast array of federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies, private property, fences, alarms and surveillance systems, jails, prisons, mental institutions, lawyers, judges, zoning boards, planning boards, school boards, family courts, an elaborate judicial system with practically uncountable laws. No one on earth knows all of the laws and regulations, and all will violate some law that they are unaware of at least once, if multiple times, to protect what little freedom is left. Ultimately, as is apparently happening today, will be preemptive reasoning for restricting every movement, word, and thought of a population. The result of all this protectionism is that freedom does not exist. Freedom may only appear to exist in delusional parts of the imagination that has not already been completely corrupted, as its last hiding place. Unguided freedom to do whatever we want regardless of who suffers will eliminate most freedom eventually and justifiably in this case, because we have lost touch with the inherent law of conscientiously growing in harmonious omniversal loving union with all. Freedom can and has destroyed freedom. Love and harmony call for, mandate and will allow maximum freedom. More human-made, punitive and restrictive law that a society needs to keep its population in order. More evidence there is to show that the principles of that society are inhumane, suffocating, and flawed, causing dysfunction, generation and or criminality. More repressive the legal system, more dysfunction in the society, and the more dysfunction, more repression will be needed, and so on and so forth until freedom is placed in its coffin and buried in that society. High-minded and reverent humans that are following the naturally inherent, seeking harmonious loving union with their world or God do not need excessive human-made laws to keep them in harmony with their neighbors, because they are living harmony, not violation. Their alignment with the inherent drive for harmonious loving union with the omniverse/God is their primary concern, while all that is inharmonious with their being generates an inner Self-regulating punitive system. There is usually a minority of a population that violates others, either consciously or unconsciously, which in turn promotes requests for laws to prohibit this minority population from committing these violations, which usually include stifling all, almost, if not all laws are made by a minority of lawmakers or control freaks for a minority of violators with forced compliance by all, with punishment for actual violations of these laws along with imaginary preemptive punishment for the theory that you might violate. Punishment and the fear of punishment are personal and social stressors. Violations flare up in most social levels of a society, thereby producing restrictive laws at all levels. As time goes by in this society, there are rules and regulations for every move that the entire population makes. Majority is compelled to life within the confines established by a minority of rulers for a minority of violators. Result of this suffocative evolution is a restricted society that will seek escapism through whatever means available: criminality, homelessness, drug and alcohol abuse, deadly risk-taking, gambling, sexual excesses, gluttony, therapy, mental and emotional irregularities, bread/cake and circuses, etc., to wither and die on its own, or be taken over by a freer and so-called barbaric society or culture. Bold. Excessive human-made laws strangle life. These laws are often made by those that use them to control others and the world outside of themselves, and can follow them without much effort or are immune to their consequences because they are compatible with their way of living. Criminals are made from citizens of this community who are not part of the immune in crowd or government employees, or are incapable or unwilling to process this myriad of uncountable laws, or don't have wealth and competency, or feel confined within the legal web made by others, for others. Every law made by controlling bodies to regulate others gives these controllers more power and control, and removes power and control from those under their yoke. Power is and has been corrupting individuals, cultures, and societies from the beginning of human history, and this kind of power has a natural inclination for incrementalism onto absolute power and therefore absolute corruption. Everywhere and during every phase of psychosocial development in these societies of excess laws that those incapable of conforming and/or thriving venture, are stopped, surveilled, labeled, thwarted, oppressed, jailed, hospitalized, criticized, ostracized, or neglected. Many have little choice but to join others who are equally incapable of conforming, as outlaws. For these individuals to live their lives in a healthier manner, they need to move outside or beyond the stifling yoke of excessive human-made laws and rules that may appear to be beneficial to those controllers who make these rules. These outsiders then make their own rules for their group, cult, your gang, or religion. Citizenship and national boundaries can be prisons for inhabitants and barriers for outsiders. Ideally, we could have one Earth with one humanity and limit physical, national, ethnic boundaries to almost none if harmonious love were the path and goal of the society. With omniversal love we can enjoy ultimate societal freedom. Without omniversal love, we will need cages and dictators. Which will we choose? Though private property, rights established for it, used to provide a haven to rest, feed, breed, think, recreate, grow, store, etc., governments have found their way through these protections more thoroughly than common criminals. Private property puts humans in legally surveyed cages and makes a labyrinth out of social liberty in that one can only walk the sidewalks and designated trails on public land abiding by rigid behavioral guidelines. Almost everywhere on Earth the so-called owners of property are on guard against trespass with miserly and potentially deadly intent. Most travelers at inappropriate times are viewed with suspicion by the ever-watchful eyes of those who feel it is their primary purpose to manage the psychological electric fences of public opinion and activity. No matter how restrictive a government's laws are, we still have the capacity and the inner desire to merge in harmonious loving union with all the omniverse/God. No obstacles such as government, iron bars, deceiver, marketer, religious fanatic, drug, chaos, problem, or need can remove our innate drive to immerse ourselves into loving harmony with our world, omniverse, nature or God. It can be thwarted, distracted, misled, repressed, suppressed, covered over, made more difficult to achieve, but it cannot be removed. Even death may be a merging with all. Humanity needs to identify and then find ways to make it easier for all to follow their natural tendency for harmonious love with all. Nature or God has built into our psyche and being instinct to find and return into loving harmony with nature or God as migratory land, air, and sea animals seek and find their ways back to their destinations. We were made and continue to be made/maintained by something other than ourselves, and that something wants us to be in harmony with it and the world around us. That it is God, nature, Great Spirit, energy, the omniverse. Both spiritual and evolutionary laws indicate that absolute free will is an error of sorts in that willfully violating the natural or spiritual laws of seeking harmony and avoiding pain keeps all or most living things on relatively predictable courses. Enduring pain may be evolutionarily useful, but willfully seeking pain is primarily a human disease. Willfully seeking anger, resentments, conflicts, anxiety, depression, hangovers, jealousy, etc. is the unnatural downward spiraling of human nature that denotes the potential majesty of the human within the majesty of God. This perversion of natural law in natural settings may or should eliminate itself naturally. Paul sought and taught harmonious omniversal loving union with all as a means and an end. Pain, or estrangement from love would provide the correction that modern judicial systems now force upon their subjects with disturbing and suffocative results. Love as the judicial system is already inherent in the human being and the rest of nature. Avoiding pain and seeking love are and always have been primary movers of most all living things. Attaining and maintaining love for all things is natural law and needs no other laws. If all were practicing these principles, there would be little or no need for the large military complexes, federal, state and local police forces, jails, prisons, mental wards, lawyers, judges, zoning boards, planning boards, school boards, private property, and an elaborate judicial system with practically uncountable laws to protect an illusion of freedom that does not exist because of these suffocative laws. Percy Bysshe Shelley, 1792–1822. The only use of government is to repress the vices of man. If man were today sinless, tomorrow he would have a right to demand that government and all its evils should cease. In the same manner that inherited wealth is often misused by those it is given to, the inherited power, wealth, genetic potential passed on within nations, cultures, races is often misused by the generations that did not earn it and therefore do not appreciate its value. Hard times make hard people make good times make weak people make hard times. Unknown author. Alcoholism and most forms of addiction are being treated with the use of simple spiritual and/or psychological principles. In these severe cases, the addictive suffering is the punitive system, and the peace and serenity produced by practicing or obedience to spiritual and/or psychological principles is the haven sought and maintained. There is no need for governments and leaders in an omniversally loving society. Punitive hell of addiction and its consequences contrasted with the reward of peace, love, and sanity can't do a better job of securing social harmony than any man-made laws and tribunals. In this way, the omniverse/God/nature is the judge, jury, and executioner, not humans punishing humans. We have prescription and illegal drug crises and other forms of escapism throughout the world because of the lack of social focus on and training for the naturally euphoric fulfillment of our natural drive for harmonious omniversal love, or loving God with all our faculties. Addicts, criminals, all humans are seeking loving harmony with their worlds through whatever means possible, even defective means as the best they understand. Global education in the principles of love are needed today and tomorrow into the future of humanity. The Omniverse is a loving and punishing God. Those who violate the natural laws of being human will be punished. For those who seek alignment and maintain that alignment, there is harmony and love. Put your body at the right distance from a campfire on a freezing night and you will be harmonious. Put your body in the fire or too far from its heat and you will either burn or freeze in a literal hell on earth. If or when these opposites of earthly heaven and hell, peace and war, pleasure and pain, love and hate, conscience and guilt, harmony and conflict, enough and hunger, etc. return to be the true guides of mankind, and the majority will choose alignment with our natural drive for harmony and love. Harmonious omniversal loving union may be the fabric or foundation and structure of the highest form of civilization. When a society is sensitive to their inner guides to become balanced, being print and wise in their interactions with people, places, and things without unnatural compulsions, this society will achieve meaningful peace. Humans judging and punishing other humans. Though currently useful in a system that creates or sustains dysfunction, is a corruption of or interference with the inherent natural laws of harmonious love and suffering. To answer a criminal with nothing but a long jail sentence, fines or death means that the judicial system does not know what it is doing and must be changed. The judicial system does not use the best means for establishing and maintaining harmony and sanity. Why is it sitting in judgment? The society cannot rehabilitate its criminals, then it is lost and will ultimately collapse. Love is the truth to live and the rehabilitative answer to criminals/sinners. Harmonious loving union with all is the answer or cure for many if not all human ills and problems. Understanding what is harmonious and what is unharmonious for us leads to proper empathy or empathetically understanding what is good for our neighbors. Distillation of all laws and religions is reduced to harmonious omniversal loving union with all, or to say it biblically, Matt 22:37-4. Shall love the Lord, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. And Romans 13:8-10. Owe nothing to anyone, except to love one another, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. The commandments: shall not commit adultery, shall not kill, shall not steal, shall not covet, and whatever other commandment there may be, are summed up in the saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no evil to the neighbor. Hence, love is the fulfillment of the law. For we can use the Bhagavad Gita, only by love can men see me, know me, come unto me. Who works for me, who loves me, whose end supreme I am, free from attachment to all things, and with love for all creation, he in truth comes unto me. If God is everywhere, then you return to the love your enemies, or remain loving in the presence of your enemies. Forgive those who violate you and judge not foolishly, because the Spirit of the omniversal God is everywhere in all people, places, things, and activities, including those who are apparently lost. This is all founded upon Jesus' message from God, to love God in all, with all.
All right, there's another cluster of chapters from The Will to Flower. We're going to go to another one. We're going to put them in order, the order they are in the book. I'll label them, number them, so you know which order to watch them in or listen to them. This is kind of an attempt to make an audio-visual book so you can read it and listen to it at the same time. You do one or both. Turn the volume off and just read it, or turn the imagery off and just listen to it, or again, do both. So as you can see, the next chapter is going to be evolutionary theories. So, okay, that's the end of that video, and we're going to go on to the next one.